We're good.
Call the meeting to order. Joining the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'll thank everybody for attending. First order of business, we need to set a hearing for a zoning application amendment for the zoning articles. I would move that zoning application we received HTZC 25-05 amendment of Article 8 Neighborhood Office District and Article 14 Neighborhood Commercial District. Regional Planning had the application on the 24th of April of 25. Commission recommendation of trustees was made on May 5th of 2025. We are setting this hearing for June 18th, 2025 at 7:30 p.m. here at the Township Community Room. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Hearing will be June 18th at 7:30 p.m. Physical officer?
April bank reconcile, you guys already saw that and signed it. Appropriation status and ledger reports, you have an email and they're online with the cash summary report. Approved warrants and vouchers. Payable from the payment listing report, starting with warrant number 13935 through warrant number 13956. Voucher number 127 through 2025, voucher 134 through 2025, total amount $88,338.43.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Motion carried.
The Harlan Township audit is complete. This is the third clean audit Harlan Township has received since I've been the fiscal officer. The state of Ohio auditors started a STARS rating program in 2019 for townships to earn stars for best practice of being transparency in government. The STARS program was implemented to track compliance among public entities, help the public hold government accountable, and provide our public office officials with a standard incentive to their effort to operate in an open and transparent manner. Audits are the only time the entity is recommended and then earns stars from the auditor performing the audit. It's a part of the audit, but it's like extra credit in school. When I was appointed in 2020, we had 1 star for mandatory sunshine training class. My goal was to get Harlan Township up to the maximum stars of 7 that we could earn by being open and transparent with the residents. I'm very proud to say that we have accomplished this goal. Bestell and Company has recommended 7 out of 7 best practices for Harlan Township to the state of Ohio auditor. Once the audit report is accepted by the state of Ohio auditor, I will post the completed reports to the website.
I want to thank Lisa for the excellent audit, the 7-star. That's fantastic. Any other comments?
Yes, I'd like to commend you, Lisa, for your hard, diligent work. Your attention to detail is infuriating. For example, when I buy cupcakes at Kroger for a Saturday meeting, Lisa hounds me to get the 24 cents tax off the bill. So that it represents what the township should be charged. And that's a pain, but I appreciate your consistency to these things. And it is remarkable that the township has this record and that you've had this standard of excellence, and we greatly appreciate it.
Thanks.
Same. I think the amount of paperwork that we get on this table almost every Wednesday that we meet here is just a drop in the bucket of everything that you're doing. And I appreciate your additional level of accountability for the township, make sure that we're running in good shape. So 7 out of 7, I mean, that's awesome. Lots of good things on the fiscal side of the township.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, Lisa.
I agree.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll dive into trustee business. We have discussion on the road to submit for OPWC. Doug, would you like to give your report? I didn't have a chance to pass it on to Jason.
Oh, sure, that's fine. Thank you, trustees. Doug Riedel, Township Liaison with the Delaware County Engineers Office. Trustee Jackson asked for our recommendation of our office regarding the OPWC application for this coming fall when the applications are due. And, you know, based on how we evaluate the roads, our recommendation is to reapply for Green Cook Road for the 2026 funding cycle.
And it's your decision or advice to put Green Cook Road back in
Yes, that would be my recommendation, yes.
because of low volume on the other streets.
Typically, yes, our subdivision streets that have cul-de-sacs and are just strictly the residential traffic that lives in that neighborhood. They generally do not score as high as, you know, our typical through roads like Green Cook. Montgomery was another case where you get more traffic on those roads. So generally those do score higher than roads that don't have as much traffic.
If it's the pleasure of the board, we can resubmit Green Cook. We'll get the REA and so forth back to you next month, first of the month.
That's
At
fine.
least you'll know we're wanting to do Green Cook.
Absolutely. That's all we need.
All right. Well, we got you here. We got the 2 resolutions to deal with. The first resolution is 25-0521T003. Approve the request for engineering assistance from Green Cook culvert replacement. Making that motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Second thing is the culvert. You kind of beat us there before we got our paperwork in. Resolution 25-0521T004, approval of funds to pay for Green Cook culvert replacement. And that estimate is $23,408.80 for that. Is there any discussion on that?
Specifically, which culvert is it?
It's at, what's the address, Jason?
Right at 3673 Green Cook Road, which is just north of Robbins a little bit.
And that's the form that we got in the packet, right? Ashley, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dave has the one that you guys have to sign.
Here's what you guys
Yeah,
got.
we had the heavy rains there a couple of weeks ago.
I can get it.
We had a
typed
washout
up.
that undermined the road 2 or 3 feet, so
Yeah.
it's kind of raised its head up to needing immediate attention.
Right here.
Yeah.
And that's why our office moved quickly to evaluate what's going on there and get an estimate to you all so we can get it scheduled as quickly as possible as far as replacing.
Yeah. No issues on my end, John.
Do I have a second to my resolution to replace?
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Give us a minute, we'll sign this and, we have anything else for Jason? Do we have anything else for Doug?
Not at this time. We're in continuous conversation weekly, so
Okay. You guys could sign that and at least you can get copies. So.
I got
You got
it.
anything else for us, Doug?
Other than our work on the road improvement program is ongoing and we have a 2-week schedule that comes out. And as soon as we know of work within Harlem Township, we will send that schedule on to to the board and to your staff so that you're aware of, the work that's going on in our township with the road improvement program. Other than that, that's all I had.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Lisa will have copies of those for you.
Yeah, question came about the no engine braking signs. We have those ready in our shop. The signs, we made those signs ourselves. And we're gonna notify ODOT to have those installed. So hopefully, I would say next week, I'm hoping we'll have those signs installed.
Boundaries of the township? or-
That's how the
Okay.
law is written, is that it needs to be at the boundaries of the township. Yeah. Mhm.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you.
Before we get very deep in the weeds, Lauren, do you have anything?
I didn't have anything like real formal today, but I did update some things out there. We have some wording about the tick season coming up for you guys, some tips. We get a lot of questions if we test ticks at the health department. We do not. That happens in Ohio Department of Health. But we can help identify a tick if you found one on your body. So you bring those in. Trying to think what else I put out there. We have a baby expo that we're hosting at Grady Hospital on August 9th. So if you know anyone that's pregnant or had a baby in the last year, we'd love for them to come. And we had no power today. So if you were trying to get a hold of us, we were closed this afternoon. We'll be open tomorrow, hopefully with power. Anything else for me? Okay.
Any questions for her? Okay,
Oh.
thank you.
We were out here this spring. We do have some dates set up to come back out here this summer. So I'll be sending that probably to Ashley once it's out and available. So we hope to see you guys at our mobile unit. We bring vaccinations, health screenings like blood pressure, cholesterol, glucose, and then sometimes we have WIC staff on there to be able to certify low-income families on supplemental food programs. So please come by and see us.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we'll get into our trustee items. I had Ashley put on about the single trash hauler. I reached out to Rumpke. I've yet to get a call back. That was Monday, and so I'm probably gonna have to ring that bell again. The information that Bob Singer furnished, the rates are Genoa, Liberty, and Orange are all $57.12 per quarter from Rumpke contract. Trenton is $55 a quarter as we know it. Galena's $59.22, that's Rumpke again. Village of Sunbury is $52.98 Rumpke. Local waste to Kingston is $63.45. Berkshire is $62.85, so they're all less than $70. And I talked to the one trustee at Trenton, and supposedly this is a volunteer bid. Is that correct, Bob?
Yeah, basically, they were going to bid it, and Rumpke got word and said, we'll just give you this price. And so it wasn't an official bid, but Rumpke has honored that price. And,
What I understand, I think Trenton put it in their newsletter or something, once they got that offer from Rumpke,
I don't know.
to get the information out there to the public. Now, I talked to Corey at prosecutor's office about this, because he helped, well, it was before that, but now Genoa Corey works with them since Mark Fowler moved on. And he said he'd be willing to help us with anything if we got into a contract. He also mentioned might be able to tag on to one of these existing contracts. Now, I'm not sure how that would work if you'd bid it, and that would be, they would submit that option. Rumpke or Waste Management or Local Waste, I'm sorry.
I
So,
talked to Paul Wise
yes. I
at
talked to-
Genoa,
Mhm.
and he said he forgot to tell you that we can join their contract.
Okay,
The other townships would agree that
Okay.
we could join it,
okay.
but that he did not think that would be a difficult process.
I wondered, but we didn't get into that, but I knew that, well, Corey mentioned it was be an option. So if we want to pursue that, we probably have to get back with Corey and say, okay, do we need to bid this to do that? Or how does the competitive bid system work, or, you know? Or being they bid it, maybe we could just join in and there's no legal situation we'd get involved in.
Both seem to indicate that we could just join it.
Okay. That would be a good thing. So I can double back and touch base with him and Corey if you would like.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Okay,
The wise course of action.
yeah, I'll pursue that.
So it's 57.12 a quarter.
Yes, yeah. And I forget, I think. I've got it here someplace else. There's certain containers furnished or an option to buy or rent. I forget how that, it's, all these contracts are different, blends. I mean, the, Jennifer Way Young from the health department sent me some information, and and for some reason, the prices she sent were weekly. I don't know why, but, cause I know it, all companies bill quarterly, I think. So I can double back with Corey and with Paul.
I guess I'd be curious too, what kind of recycling options they have and if
Well,
they do,
they're-
how it
yeah,
would impact our township service.
I believe Genoa is every other week.
Mhm.
And there was 2 containers furnished, or I think the resident had an option, which container. The smaller ones were for the recycle. So, and the bigger ones, I think, I don't know if you rented the toter. Like I say, it's a whole bunch of different blends, depending on which community it is.
Now, does every resident have to sign up for it? If you don't, if you have other means?
That I've got to get back into. That was one stickler years ago when we talked about this. Because some folks say, well, you know, we take it to work or whatever. And
You know, it'd be-
so I don't know. And you got some elderly folks that don't generate much, and they, you know, they take it to work, or their children live in the township or whatever, you know.
Right.
Or they put the bag in the thing at the McDonald's or something, you know. I've heard of that kind of trick too, so there's everything. Now, they did say, and he mentioned to you, they have senior discount, but they also have at the garage for handicapped personnel, people. And all they have to do is have a prescription from their doctor and reinforce that to get that service. So all they gotta do is put their container outside the garage door. And supposedly the driver will go up and get it. We don't know how it works, but. So, okay, I'll give her some more information. Next item, we're gonna talk a little bit about the home rule.
Sure, so we brought this up, I think probably a couple regular meetings ago, and my intent was tonight is really just to bring a little update of some of the diligence that we've done, and then perhaps continue this into next month's agenda for action if we seem fit. So essentially, I spent the last couple of months trying to gather as much information in one-on-one conversations as much as possible, because you can go online and do quite a bit of research, and the RC has a good bit on limited home rule townships in general, open to whatever your interpretation might be. There's also the members brief that was put out in 2021 that I reviewed a couple of times that tries to simplify some of the information there. But the one thing that was missing for me was just kind of like a hard and fast pros and cons list, right? Like, what is the impact positively or negatively to the township? And I finally found something pretty close to that, which I distributed to all of the staff here at the township. I think you guys got, and we can make that public in the packet with the meeting tonight. But a short list of the conversations, I had a telephone conversation with Lori Sanders, who's a trustee at Violet Township, who has been limited home rule for quite some time. I had a brief conversation with Nate Green, who is with Montrose, a name that is familiar in this room. I also reached out to Corey Goat at the Delaware County Prosecutor's Office, again, someone we're all very familiar with. His response to me was pretty interesting too, is that for Delaware County, it's come up a few times in recent history, but has never really gone very far other than a murmuring. So they did not consider themselves experts on the matter at the prosecutor's office. So that, I'll say thanks to Holly Matty who helped facilitate a lot of these conversations, but I also, at the end of it, circle back with Pete Griggs with, Brocious Johnson and Griggs, the township's legal counsel and on a lot of matters. And Pete, his firm is quite familiar with this. And Jim, you probably know this too. I think they've assisted 6 other townships with the conversion or adopting limited home rule. So he was able to provide the documentation that I provided to the staff, and what that is literally a pros and cons list. It talks about what you can do, what you can't do as a limited home rule. It gives you some information, positive and negatively, but for intents and purposes of starting this conversation tonight, it really comes down to 2 main sticking points. The responsibility of the township to provide police coverage of the township, and the requirement of the township to appoint a legal director. And so in researching these things, and even in the ORC, it does say that the township has many options in determining what those solutions are. You know, especially with police coverage, you can go down the route of trying to incorporate your own police department. You can go down the route of reaching out to other municipalities to, join on with them. Even one very close to us, Blendon Township is limited home rule. They have a police department, right? So it's a lot of testament there of how this can work. However, you can be contracted with the sheriff's department as long as you have consistent coverage in the township. So that is not a far difference from the current police protection in Harlem. So I don't see that would be a really big hurdle for us to get over. On top of that, with the legal director, again, there's options there. You can hire someone full-time, but I would say a township of our size would not necessarily need someone full-time for that. You can have an agreement formally with the prosecutor's office to continue the services that they currently provide, and that satiates this statute. There are even cases of a township that utilizes their counsel for this purpose. Case in point, the law firm of Brocious Johnson and Griggs could agree to be the law director of the township whenever necessary, and that satiates the statute. There are cases of these 2 stipulations in Ohio where the townships have been able to check those boxes without incurring any additional costs to the township. Be it an agreement with the sheriff's department to continue services as usual, or maybe even, improve them. Be it an agreement with the county prosecutor's office to continue services as they have always been. These things, there are examples where these agreements have been made between the counties and the townships that did not cost any additional money to the township. So I thought, to me, that was a big point, because from a financial point of view, when you look at limited home rule, those are really the 2 things that could incur some additional responsibility to the township. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the police protection is the one that I'm questioning, and that would have to be a conversation with the sheriff's department about how things would change, if it's going to be a monetary expense to us or what. Now, the other thing is, it supposedly gives you more rights for water and sewer. Okay, if we're assuming something with sewer, does that mean the Delaware County Sanitary Department's not going to do the engineering that we're expecting done, and we're going to be responsible to do our own?
So
There's things there we got to explore.
I think that question hits on 2 things. One, when it comes to engineering within the township, limited home rule would give us the capability to source our own engineering firm.
Right.
We would not be beholden to the county's resources in those particular instances, should we, make that sort of judgment here. But then also, kind of a broader point that Pete helped me identify is that if you enact limited home rule, you are still operating the day-to-day business of the township as a standard statutory township.
Right.
These limited home rule powers are available should you choose to enact them in a case-by-case scenario. So it doesn't change the daily activities, the daily governance of the township, but it's there if we need it, right? So in the way that I kind of looked at that as similar to our cloud, our zoning clouds, right? Like the way that we can pull that down out of the cloud, those overlays, if they need it. It's kind of the same thing as, you know, if we're in these situations, we need to reach up and pull down some higher level power. We can do that for for situations as they arise. Other than that, business as usual for the township. Well, specifically though, you know, when it relates to the sewer that you're mentioning, I won't pretend to know the answer specifically to that. I know that it gives us the ability to manage our own sewer and water utilities, but I wouldn't know the details on that.
I wouldn't either, and you know, in Delaware, sort of, they control what they're serving, and if we have the deal with Galena, I'm not, you know, what the responsibility would be there on that part, on the 2A.
Well, then,
A lot of things we gotta get sorted out. And then if there's any added expense, a great amount, we don't have any way of levying taxes to recoup it. That's the biggie.
so to that point, the township can put on the ballot a levy to support certain things. A
Right.
police department would be an example.
Yeah.
But that leads me to one of the, I believe, benefits of limited home rule is that we double the borrowing power of the township. So right now, when we talk about borrowing money, we're capable of borrowing up to 5% of the total valuation of the property in the township, upon which we have to pay in 10-year terms. So anything we borrow has to be paid in 10 years. Under limited home rule, we're able to borrow up to 10.5%. And that term is extended to 10 years. So depending on what we want to do as far as, you know, maybe not community infrastructure, but maybe township infrastructure, such as new township hall or parks improvements or things like that, should we decide to borrow money, it opens up a lot of opportunities to do that in a different way.
Under the pros and cons, number 5 says a township may supply water and sewer services to the unincorporated area of the township. May supply. And in Delaware County, Delaware retains the right to provide sewer to any unincorporated area of the county.
Mhm.
And they're not going to sacrifice that right. So I don't think that we would be in competition with Delaware County, nor obligated by Delaware County to provide what they want to provide.
I think we
the
would need
township.
to,
Right.
you know, in any
Yeah.
foreseeable future.
Right.
Yeah,
I-
I'm not saying compete with them.
Oh, yeah.
Whether we have to assume that responsibility.
I think the way that I kind of envision that is taking, for instance, the village of Galena, right? They have their own sewer infrastructure, which they were able to create and develop because they are a municipality. As a statutory township, we would not be able to do that. As a limited home rule township, we would have the ability to undertake such a task if we had the means to do so and the reason to do so. But to your point, right, like, I'm not sure in the foreseeable future that we would ever have a reason to do that.
Does
About the
the,
roads and the culverts and. What
Uh,
about if we wanted to put new levees on? You can't, like, if we wanted to do a road levy and a parks levy and.
To my knowledge, none of that changes.
I think we still have that capability on that part.
As mentioned, even if you adopt a limited home rule, the regular operations of the township remain the same as a statutory township as identified by the ORC.
how does the conversation about a township administrator weave into home rule?
Sure. So, if you read kind of the stipulations of becoming a home rule in the ORC, it's very much based on population. So, any township that's over 2,500 in population can try to adopt limited home rule. However, between 2,500 and 5,000, you have to have a township administrator in place. Over 5,000, the township administrator requirement goes away. So, you know, it can be enacted without the township administrator. However, to me, that almost seems counterintuitive. I feel like the higher the population, the more important the township administrator is. One of the comments that one of the folks amongst all my conversations here had made to me is that it seems like the ORC was identified as, you know, they want to make sure that the smaller townships are getting as much help as they can from the higher entities, right? Be it the county, so on and so forth. But once a township starts to develop a little bit more, gets a little bit bigger and starts to be at a little bit more control of their own destiny, then they have some avenues to flex a little bit more muscle of governance.
So no other township in Delaware County is a home rule township. Is that correct?
No.
That is not correct.
Well, I was told today that there was not.
Well, so you're right. So the Liberty that you had mentioned to me
Yes.
is a home rule township. That's in Butler, County.
Okay,
And Berlin Township had tried it
Yeah,
on
Failed.
but it failed on the ballot.
right.
And so there have been some that have tried it in Delaware County, but they're not currently. There are some that are quite close to us, right? So, Linden, I used as an example a minute ago. And then Prairie. So
Yeah.
there are quite a few locally.
did the county oppose Berlin's attempt to become home rule?
Not to my knowledge. Mhm.
And then,
Doug, I don't know if
as you
was-
talk with these entities, those folks who have gone home rule, are they glad they did?
Yes. The general consensus that I got from speaking to folks at townships that were home rule is, I don't know why you wouldn't want to be, because there is no downside to it. The comments that I got from third parties or product or subject matter experts were the same. I don't know why you wouldn't do it, because there's no downside. There is the additional responsibilities as mentioned, and police coverage and legal direction. However, there's avenues to do that don't always incur a drastic cost to the township. And it just enables you to be a little bit more in control of what's happening. There's other kind of smaller benefits that come with it too, like the township would be able to enact, ordinances isn't the right word, but we're able to enact civil penalties towards resolutions that we enact, up to $1,000. They're not criminal penalties thing at all, but we'd be able to enforce a little bit more of what we'd like to have and see around here. I think Mike might be interested in that. So, smaller little ancillary things that come along with it. The other input that I got from Pete is that it seems when the Ohio Township Association takes things to the General Assembly of, hey, we'd like to give townships a little bit more strength, a little bit more stature, they tend to almost test them with the LRC or limited home rule townships first. So, it's the next step up for us. And so I know incorporation has been a topic of conversation, and we all know that how difficult that would be based on population and boundary requirements. But this would be the next best thing to giving us some power of incorporation.
So this is in line with the strategic priority of autonomy. And one of the things we recognize is that if we are not going to merge with another entity and hopefully not be annexed by another entity, then the responsibility falls upon Harlem Township to develop its own future. And it seems like this is a logical step in that process of autonomy.
That seems a fair synopsis to me. I mean, one of the things that I tried very much to do is to be unbiased with it. Because going into the conversations, didn't have enough information to feel one way or the other about whether it was a good thing or whether it was a bad thing. Because I think we're all trying to avoid unnecessary or undue cost to the township, especially since we'll have a lot of things that will put a bit of a financial burden on us moving forward, be it infrastructure improvements, etc. Right? But for this, it does seem to check that box of empowering us to make the decisions rather than having decisions made for us. I think the only other point that I would emphasize on this is that it does not explicitly empower the board. It empowers the township, because should we choose to pull down those powers to make a decision, then we are subject to the rules of limited home rule. So any of these decisions would have to have multiple readings, and any decision would be open to referendum. So any decision under limited home rule that the board makes, the citizens can overturn. And I think that that's an important part of it, because like I said, it does keep us more in line with an incorporated municipality.
Yeah, resolution, adopting the resolution, it'd be 3 readings.
Correct. So things might not get done at the speed at which we can currently do them, which seems as a snail's pace as is, but I think it's important to have that oversight from the community should anything come up, because we are, taking more responsibility there. We would have the ability to enact emergency resolutions, if they fit the description, but I can't see those coming up in Harlem very often.
One advantage for us as we consider development in the future is that when the township decides that a new community authority, establishing one is in our best interest,
Mhm.
then we don't have to go to the county to accomplish that. That can simply be accomplished within the jurisprudence of the township. And that goes for things like TIFs, et cetera. We become the authorizing authority for those mechanisms, for implementing those tools, and don't rely on an external.
Yep. Yeah, and so to your point, to my knowledge, I have not heard of any situations where the county has opposed it. Pete would tell you that typically anytime this goes to the ballot and fails, it's because of some sort of unrest within the community. And I personally feel like Harlem has gone 180 in the past year and almost a half. And I could be naive, but I don't feel like we are dealing with a lot of unrest right now. We have a lot of things cooking. There's a lot going on, but I feel like, if anything, the fiscal audit is an example of how we are incredibly transparent. There's lots of good things going on. So, we can have continued discussion here if you'd like, but I think at this point, it would probably be my recommendation that we put it on the agenda for the June regular meeting, including a resolution to include it on the ballot, because it would require a vote to be enacted.
Yeah, I think we've got to answer some of these questions as far as the police protection and so forth. The law director, I think you may be on the right track with contracting an agreement with the prosecutor. I don't know about the police. I don't know.
Well, and we're in a pretty uniquely strong situation with that, because Pete and his firm have so much experience with this already. These are walks that they can help us go down, get some pretty quick answers to these questions, because they've already done it.
So only 31 out of 175 townships in Ohio does limited home rule.
I would say that number has probably increased. The one thing that's interesting is there's not like an active list that I could find of the townships. But that number, that I read it as 31, I read it as 33, but most of those counts come from 4 to 5 years ago.
Did that number come from the Township Association or?
It does, yes, sir.
Okay.
However, the Ohio Township Association website does not have a list of limited home rule townships.
Okay.
But that's my piece on that tonight. Again, I don't know if there's any further discussion on it, comments or concerns, but I think we could probably spend the next month trying to answer some of those questions, and Pete might even be here next week.
Pete will be here next week and we can talk with him about this.
Yeah, and that would be pretty short order getting answers to some of these questions. But in the meantime, like I said, to start the process officially, it would require a passing resolution from us to notify the Board of Elections.
Do you gotta read it 3 times?
Not yet.
No, not yet.
When we,
Right.
Bob, do you have something?
we'd be looking at the November ballot.
I would like to. I know that is quick. I know that is fast, but with the strategic work that John and so many other are putting into this, with the conversations with Galena that Holly and Nine and some other people are working on, like there are a lot of things happening now that I think can benefit from the limited home rule abilities as soon as next year. And so, if this went to the ballot in November, it would be effective at the beginning of the year. So I think the time is now for something like this. I don't want to rush it. That's why I'm glad we're talking about it, late spring rather than last minute. But, I guess that's not up to me. Yes, ma'am, Jenny.
You do have to present your case to the public still before you're gonna, I think that would also be very important.
Yeah, and that's one reason too why I came tonight with the suggestion to publicize it and put it on next month's trustee meeting, because I would love to hear some feedback, because it will not go forward if the township does not vote for it. And that has been the case in Butler Township, in Berlin Township, and many others where the board has voted for it and the community has struck it down. And from what I can tell in my research, there's not much case against adopting limited home rule. So, I'm hoping that, if we don't have any strong concern over the next month, if the board agrees that it's the way to go, then we can spend the next few months painting an incredibly clear, transparent picture as to why this helps the township. And Lindsay, I know you're excited to help with that.
Yeah, you know,
It's just always easier for this township if you'd like to vote no than to vote yes.
Well, and the benefit there is that this would not cost anybody any money. that we know of right off the bat.
We don't know that
Yet. We don't know it yet.
We've talked about this before, and John and I had a brief conversation about home rule. And I think this is on Dave's mind, between now and the next trustees meeting, when you're meeting with everybody. Is there a way to lock down the sheriff that he's not going to, whatever a fee would be or no fee for servicing Harlem Township if we go home rule?
Yeah, I think that's a great thing that we can talk to Pete about, because
Yeah.
as he advised me, that is the process. They would, seek out.
4 or 5 items that people could voluntarily, we wouldn't have to pay for if we can get them on board. The engineer's office, sanitation engineer.
It's really just two things: the police protection and the legal direction. Those are the two things that a limited home rule township are required to provide to the unincorporated area. When you talk about things like water and sewer, the township may enact that.
But I'm worried more about like engineering.
Sure, we would still work with the county engineering
Okay.
office.
And then, of course, there's the question of the administrator. Yeah, is the cost of that.
Yeah, and I think we have also for the past few months been talking about a township administrator and putting that in the mix, but I would say that that's parallel to this conversation because it is not required to us at this point.
Okay, I'm just, going forward, if the residents start getting on board and want to have questions, if those can be answered, by the next meeting or at the next meeting, I think that would be great.
Yeah, I wouldn't sit here to say that any of us would have all of the answers to limited home rule within the next month, right? But I think.
I'm worried about costs.
Totally agree. And that's kind of why I started the conversation with the two things that could cost us, right? And so I think those two items are paramount to this initiative. And if it's something that we choose to go forward with, but again, I want to reiterate, like, I'm not asking for a vote on it tonight. I want, folks that might have some concern or some interest in that to come to the trustee meeting. Let's talk about it. And, if it seems like it makes sense, then we as the board, as the representatives of the township, will move it forward, but then ultimately it goes to the ballot box, right? I mean, that's what's great about it. It's not totally up to us.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other comments before we move on?
Yeah, so about legal. So we would lose the Delaware County's legal then.
Not necessarily.
I don't know that.
By statute, they are not required to provide it to us pro bono. However, under limited home rule, all it identifies is that we are required to seek out that legal advice, right? And so if the county prosecutor's office agrees to go into an agreement with us to provide that service, it's taken care of. That statute is satiated. But that would also be the point with an independent law firm as well.
Do we have, or should we have a conversation with the leadership in Delaware County about this process? So for example, the commissioners or the county administrator, just to say, hey, this is something that's on our table. Do you have thoughts, concerns? Are you supportive, etc.? Clearly tonight's meeting, this is public
Mhm.
now. Would that be a good conversation to have.
I think we have set the tone that we are interested, we're actively interested in partnering with, our internal and external stakeholders and shareholders and what happens in Harlem Township. So I absolutely think that it would make sense to, work with the county and whatever departments to make sure that we're all aligned with the direction that things are moving. Because the last thing we want to do is, create hurdles for the county or for anyone else. We are solely focused on making sure that we're protecting Harlem Township and moving forward in our own best interests. And at this time, as we sit here, I don't think that we have any reason to think that anyone else is not.
So you would recommend that conversation?
I would recommend that conversation.
Anything else? We'll move on. Gary? We didn't have you on the agenda.
My apologies. I put it on my calendar and I think I forgot to call to let you know I was coming. If you don't have time for me tonight, I can certainly come back.
Give us the short version.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, if you want to take the podium and
Sure.
fire away.
Yep, my apologies. I do have copies, so let me give you this. Thanks for letting me come in tonight. I just wanted to share with you the Ohio Plan renewal and the cyber renewal that we have for Harlem Township. I'll just kind of get right to the point. Last year, our premium, we started at $25,501. You received a $2,242 Ohio Plan Advantage credit. So last year, at the start of the policy, it was $23,259. In October, we added a 24 Ford valued at $65,000. The Ohio Plan, as you may recall, we do not make prorated premium ads. So when you're making endorsement changes to the policy, we try to keep your premiums as level as possible. Certainly, if you were calling us and saying you added a $2 million piece of property, we would prorate that. But the smaller changes, we're not making premium charges for that during the middle of the policy term. So when I'm going through this, I'm giving you the annualized premium for those endorsements. We pick that up at the renewal is what we do. Okay. So that 24 Ford annualized would have been a $532 additional premium with the equipment. At $60,800 annualized was $146. On 10/8, we added a 21 Ford Edge at $24,995. The annualized premium was $318. On 11/12, we added an excavator with equipment. $72,000 was $173 annualized. On 11/14, we added a Cronkite trailer at $14,454, which was an annualized add of $30. The total for all those endorsements annualized was $1,199. This year on the renewal, we increased the inland marine, which is your equipment, by $260,927, which adds $708 to the premium. Computer was increased by $1,837, which is a $4 add. Auto liability increased by 3 vehicles, which was a $588 add. The auto physical damage increased by $89,000. So the values increased by $89,000, which was $341. The replacement cost values increased by $756,454 on fire apparatus. So that's an additional $2,065. Overall, when you're looking at the premium, it's up $8,429, but over $4,000 of that is exposure related changes. Also in front of you is the 5-year loss analysis. Part of the increase is also attributed to loss of Ohio Plan Advantage credit. So our Advantage credit is based off of your 4-year average premiums, and then they weight it based on your 4-year loss ratio and your compliance with risk control. So because of the claims, that number shrunk. So on top of that, we're dealing with a little harder market right now. Property lines in general across the board with all carriers are what's taking the bulk of the rate increases today. You're seeing carriers passing on rate as a result of the results that are happening industry wide, not just your results. So we're seeing it across the board with all of our companies. I still feel like the Ohio plan is a really solid option for you. They're providing great coverages from a standpoint of the liability. Our biggest attribute is that we write all of our coverages on an occurrence form. So regardless of when a claim is reported, even if you're not in our product any longer, we still would have a responsibility to pay that claim if the loss occurred when we had coverage in place. Not every company does it that way. So, that's really the thing that separates us from the Otarma product. I know you're aware of that product and have probably seen that or been contacted by them. Their product, you have coverage with as long as you're with them, but as soon as you leave, all the claims and claim expense become the responsibility of the departing member, even if you had reported a claim to them while you're insured with them. So you don't have any language like that in our product. The cyber premium did have a positive. We actually went down in the cyber. That premium came in at $2,518. Last year, we were around the $2,700 mark. Yes, $2,777 was your expiring premium on the cyber. So the cyber came down. I have some deductible options that you guys might want to consider. I mean, right now we're $1,000 on the property deductible. If you went to a $2,500 deductible on the property, sorry, let me find that.
I believe it's $326.
It's a savings of $326. That's right. And if you went to a $5,000 deductible, it's a $744 savings. You can also increase your inland marine deductibles, which is your scheduled equipment, which would be $169 savings. So those are things that you can do to try and maybe offset some of the increase that's happening. Again, it's mostly in the property line, but what's driving rate right now is hard market conditions, property increases. From an inflationary standpoint, your loss ratio is also impacting what it is. Your 5-year loss ratio is at 95%. So loss ratios, premiums taken in versus claims paid out. So carriers, are going to look at that 5-year window. We had a blip in the 23 to 24 policy term and the 20 to 21 policy term that's driving that. So
the net premium is $31,688.
that's correct.
That's plus cyber.
That's without the cyber. So you would have the
2518 on
Yeah.
additional.
correct.
And this needs to be by June
The
24th.
June 24 renewal. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Can I get a copy of all that?
absolutely, I have a copy for you.
So can we act on this in our June meeting?
You sure can. That's
Okay.
that's not a problem.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, I think we had received, some correspondence. It was okay to mail it, and I think what I did was I put it on my calendar because I was working to try and get some savings for you on this renewal, and, the only thing we could do was look at deductible.
So when do we need to have it paid by?
Well, it's June 24th. That be when the premiums due?
June 24th is your effective date. You can pay it at whenever your next council, whenever you make that, approval. We don't have to have it on the 24th. If you give us the bind order, we will bind the coverage, and then you can pay us at your next meeting. When you
Yeah,
can
next
appropriate
meeting's the
funds.
18th of June, right? Didn't I say?
Yeah, but I would have to create the check and everything before that. To give it
Right,
to him.
right.
So, but I can't do that unless you guys approve it.
Right.
If he can wait until I do the first week in July,
Right.
check run.
That's fine.
That works.
Okay,
We don't have a problem with that.
okay.
Yeah, we don't have a problem with that.
I just want to make sure we got coverage.
Yeah, definitely want that.
And there's one thing I just want to put, I know I think there was a question that was raised about, can we provide replacement cost on your dump trucks? The answer to that is no. We can provide, we insure your fire apparatus on replacement costs, but your dump trucks are insured just like a standard auto would be, and it has depreciation on the chassis. I do encourage my entities to schedule the beds. So if you've put, stainless bed on, or you've got your new bed on it that you put on, plus the plow and the spreader and the lights, you can schedule those items on our inland marine scheduled property. We do cover replacement cost on those items. So I'll just give you an example. We had an entity in Richland County where their dump truck stalled on the train track, and train came and totaled the vehicle. So they got an actual cash value settlement on the chassis, and because they scheduled their bed and their plow and their spreaders, they got replacement cost on those items. So they got two checks. They got a check from the inland marine portion of our policy, a check from the auto portion of the policy. So it put them in a better spot to go out and replace the vehicle that they needed to. So I do encourage you to do that. That's the best thing we can do to give you some form of replacement cost coverage.
That's something we probably should do.
Yeah.
You got some homework, Jason.
I think some of them are on there.
We probably have, because I had talked about this in the past, so I believe that we do schedule that. If you get new items or new trucks, and you want to schedule those, we typically tell you to give us the value of the chassis, and then pull out what the value of those items that you have on as far as attachments, and we separate that.
I think that's what we do with that 24/4.
Yeah.
Why it was separated.
Yeah. Sometimes we'll get the complete value when it's assembled and loaded, and
Right.
that gets put on the auto, and then we also add it, so we're kind of duplicating it there, so we don't want to do that. So
Right.
make sure you separate it.
All right.
We can handle it that way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt your meeting and coming in unannounced.
All worked out, thank you.
Okay.
problem.
Okay, John, you want to jump into the Delaware Foundation?
Yeah, I did talk to Chris Baker at Delaware Foundation, and remember, our question was, do we need separate accounts established for different categories of
Right.
funds? And the answer to that question is yes.
Okay.
And so the township could establish a general fund that could go toward any number of items. And what happens is when that account is established, there's a document that stipulates what those funds can be distributed for.
Mhm.
And then if we wanted to establish a parks fund, for example, that would be separate. And again, you would have documentation that would say, here are what these funds can be distributed for. And then both of those funds right now would accrue that minimum charge.
Mhm.
But he said that the foundation is rethinking that policy. And while not written in stone, it could be that in the future, there are not charges for each account that the township
That would be
might
good.
establish. And I think that he's particularly sensitive at the front end if these amounts are relatively small,
Yeah,
that the fee structure not not damage the amount of funds that's in there.
okay.
And so I think that I would recommend that the township go ahead and establish a general fund with the Delaware Foundation, so that we could direct people to that. And then if residents decide they want to give something toward a particular thing, then we could create another fund with them to that end. I think my
Either
recommendation,
that, or I'm wondering if we do it on our end. It's earmarked. We know so-and-so bequests so much money for a shelter at the park or something like that, and that
and keep it
money,
in the general.
yeah. I don't know. Because each account's what, $250 unless they make the adjustment.
That's correct.
If they make the adjustment, that's a different game.
That's correct.
Okay. So if we could clarify all that, as you said, I guess I'd be okay with it.
So does this require a resolution in our next meeting?
I would say,
And then
yes.
would the trustees give some amount toward establishing that?
Yeah, whatever. Okay with it.
Especially if we have it just sitting there.
Okay. And so if we said we're gonna give $1,000 to seed a general fund with the Delaware Foundation, Delaware County Foundation.
I mean, part of me thinks depending on what the available liquid is, that we would max out the minimum, service charge. Or or is there?
I forget now. It's been so long since we had the conversation. I forget what the service charge was. Something about 250.
$250 or 1.5%.
I think it was, yeah.
Yes.
So it was a
Yes.
considerable amount of money to exceed the 250,
Yes.
but I guess she would be the one to determine.
So where would that, if we gave $1,000 toward,
If we could.
That's my
I would
question.
have to.
I don't think
back.
legally we can. It'd have to be.
We may not be able to
Copy.
do something like that.
a copy,
Yeah,
so the
Because
trustees.
it's our own money. Why would we give it to somebody and
Yeah.
not earn interest
Yeah.
on our own township money?
So one of the trustees is gonna write a check. Is that what we're saying?
Feel good faith and each write a check. I mean,
Yes,
we
I'm
all
for that.
appreciate that.
I'm for that. Okay, so a resolution, one, to begin a general fund
right.
and then some seed money.
Right.
Okay. No problem.
Okay.
That can occur in the June. Okay.
Okay, township administrator conversation.
Yeah, so township administrator, a couple reports here. So this week, for the first time, the stakeholders in the southeastern corner of Delaware County met at Berlin Township or Genoa Township. And so you had two representatives from Sunbury, a representative from Galena, Berkshire, Harlem, Tracy Davies, Dana McDaniel, were present to begin a process of building relationships within the region. And originally when I was thinking about this, I was thinking along the lines of what Licking County did with Framework, which was a little bit more of a formal planning process. Do you guys mind shutting the doors? So we don't.
I think they're done.
Okay, they're done. All right, thank you. That's good. I felt I was competing with voices in the hall. However, the commissioners in the county were not comfortable imposing on the townships any kind of a strategic planning process. They feel strongly that that's up for the townships or for other municipalities to accomplish and not for the county to dictate. And so they were in favor of a more informal dialogue that built relationships and trust between the folks in this region. And so Tracy and Dana initiated this meeting, and we had a solid first meeting this week. Surprisingly, they said, hey, we want to keep doing this, and we'd like to do it monthly, which that surprised me, that they were willing to give that time and energy to this effort. But I think that's a good thing because it builds trust. In the process, we had two township administrators at that meeting. We had Tyler from Berkshire, and we had Paul from Genoa. And we also had Dana McDaniel, who is a recruiter. He's a headhunter for township administrators. And so I just posited, I said, here's where we are as a township. What are your thoughts? And one of the most important things that came out of this is, would it be appropriate for this slate of trustees to hire a township administrator, knowing that in November, you could have 3 different trustees up here? So understand that an administrator is coming in under a board that has a particular philosophy. And they're agreeing to a contract, a full-time position, with an understanding of that philosophy. And they're coming in most cases, to support that. And it seems that it would be challenging for us at this point in time to hire an administrator with the uncertainty that faces us in the November election. However, and this was echoed by all 3 of these, and by all 3 guys. They're like, this would not be fair to a new person coming in. And that resonated with me. And I haven't shared that with these guys, but I just did.
I agree.
Secondly, they said what you could do is you could do all the groundwork. You could write the job description. You could write the resolution. You could write the pay package. And you could get everything, you could get all the ducks in a row, so that when a new administration comes in, it takes them relatively little effort to go out and start looking for that person. But understand, looking at what other townships are doing, this is not a quick process. This takes work to find the right person and to get the chemistry, et cetera. Now, a third recommendation from Dana, he said you could, if you felt pressure, consider an interim administrator. That is, you could just bring someone in for 6 months or a year, let them try on the position. If you really felt like there were needs that had to be addressed between now and hiring a full-time person, et cetera. Interesting concept. The board would have to decide if we felt that pressure at this point in time. So I say that to kind of take the pressure off us a little bit, kind of recommend that we perhaps not go forward to put a job notice out there, but that we continue to do due diligence with our homework and kind of set the next board up for success.
Yeah, and I have concerns myself still on if we can afford this person this far ahead of potential development we're going to have this 6 to 8 years out, and what they would be doing in the meantime in this period. I know we've got strategic planning and so forth we're doing, and all the networking and so forth, and the monies, because perfect example is we just passed a resolution for a $23,000 sort of emergency culvert that we didn't know was going to happen. And Jason had almost $8,000 repair on a dump truck, and we was like a month into the new year. So we had to increase his repair budget to cover that. And we're on month number 5 out of 12. So the unseen expenses is quite a bit. And then Lisa, correct me if I'm not right. We were close to the 75% appropriation when we did the permanent when you
I'd
had,
have to look at, review.
I
the
think when you had to
numbers.
move money around to accommodate Jason's repair. There in February or whatever the bill was due.
No, I just had to move it within the budget.
Well, there was something about the 75% you were talking.
You have to stay under 75%.
Right.
You gotta have 25% of your funds, so you can last until the first draw of the
Right, right.
taxes. So that's a standard thing,
Yeah, I understand that.
so.
Okay. So, is that all on that? You want to move on to your strategic report or that was it?
Do you have any thoughts?
I agree. I mean, I think it's necessary. I agree with Dave that the cost of that is a bit of a concern because this is not a cheap addition to the township. But I think if anything, if, waiting until the new term and being more specific with incorporating that into a new budget, all of that tends to make sense. Although, they say if you wait till you can afford to have kids, you'll never have kids.
That's right.
So that's where my mind.
Okay,
Okay.
good thoughts.
So,
I'm good with that.
okay,
And so perhaps in the coming months, we generate a concrete job description and pay package. Okay,
okay.
let's work toward that.
Yeah. All right, administrative office. Good. Minutes.
I wanted to talk about strategic planning just real quick.
Okay, I
Yeah.
thought you did.
Nope, that was township administrator. So a couple of things. Because the trustees are now holding a second meeting in the month for strategic planning. A lot of what we would normally talk about at this point will occur next Wednesday. Pete Griggs will come in and talk about our relationship with Columbus. He was at a meeting this week with Columbus and Genoa Township, where they agreed, Columbus basically was signing an agreement with Genoa to, at some point in time, complete the annexation of Hoover Reservoir. They will simply annex properties that they already own that are contiguous to the reservoir. And this will not be at any additional cost or detriment to Genoa Township. I know, Chief, you had a discussion with their fire chief, and I believe that Renee was going to ask the fire chief to attend their meeting this week. I don't know if he did. Okay. So, Chief is taking a proactive stance with Columbus and talking about mutual aid as they build this new station, and I'll let him talk about that. But those kinds of things are an important part of building a good relationship. To that end, so Pete will talk about that, and he can talk about home rule. Dana McDaniel will be here to discuss our economic development plan. He has come up with a proposal for us that he will present to the trustees. He believes that in working with Montrose, that they can accomplish this in 90 days. And the elements of that plan he'll present, and we can give our feedback to what he wants to do. Holly will give an update on the strategic planning process. I know that the steering committee has got some homework they're going to work on in this coming month. Her firm is beginning to create a data update from when they did the quick strategy guide. And right now she's looking at her product, which she hopes to complete at about the same time Dana finishes his project. His work will be chapter 4 in that document, but it will include a kind of a history, a look at the current development climate, the strategic planning process, the economic development plan, and then chapter 5 is recommendations going forward. In addition to that, on Friday of this week, there are 2 meetings that are being held. there will be an informal conversation with Brian Clark at the City of Columbus to talk about what elements might be included in a CETA agreement with the City of Columbus with a JED annex. Holly and myself will be part of that conversation. Pete cannot be, but he kind of coached us earlier this week. It's an informal online discussion. We're not going down into Columbus to talk, but well, let me just float one concept that might be helpful. We're talking here tonight about funds, and we recognize there's a gap in time between the infrastructure coming in and revenue being generated by development. But the township is going to incur expenses in this gap of time. So how do we pay for those expenses? Well, a JED is one means. Pete was recommending that the township go 80-20 with Columbus, or even 90-10. That is that 80 to 90% of the revenue comes back to the township, with 10 or 20% going to Columbus, because Columbus is not really in this for economic gain. They have other fish to fry. One could say to CBUS, hey, we're willing to look at a JED that, let's say it's, I'm just going to throw out 30-70. If you are willing to help us with some of our upfront expenses. So for example, if we're going to incur planning expenses over the next 2 or 3 years, as we look at the township, broadly speaking, would Columbus be interested in facilitating that planning process, that is helping us do that well and quickly, if they could recoup that expense in a JED down the road? That's just one interesting dynamic that could be a part of a conversation that helps the township deal with some of these expenses up front that are going to be real, but are challenging for a township trying to make its own way. And this is why your strategic partners are so important for a township. A township is not powerless. A township is as strong as its strongest partners, as the relationships that we've built. And so as Columbus's interests align with ours, and they see value in infrastructure occurring quickly here because it meets some of their strategic goals, they may be interested in helping us accomplish some of these concrete realities. And so that will be part of the conversation on Friday as an example. Okay. There's a second meeting Friday afternoon with what I call large landowners in the southwest corner. The purpose of this meeting is to, number one, share information so that everyone who has resources in that corner, which is going to develop first, can hear from Black & Veatch, the contractor that's going to design the sewer. They can hear from Dana McDaniel about the economic development plan that the township is invested in. They can hear from Holly about the strategic planning that the township is doing. And then they can, if they choose, have an informal conversation about where they are and how their time frame might line up with ours. What's driving me in this is the recognition that the township still has planning to do. We've talked about Center Village and the need to make that a more concrete vision, and that vision with its architectural qualities and aesthetic qualities should inform development across the township. So what happens in the southwest corner would hopefully be informed by this planning that occurs over the next 2 or 3 years. So we're asking then for this group of individuals in the southwest corner to work with the township as we walk down this path together, that we might be aligned and not at strategic odds, or not work so radically independently that we have a patchwork quilt of development occur across the township. That's the strategic goal. And the only way to start getting aligned is to talk, to have a conversation, to build relationships. And so that's the purpose of this meeting, is to talk. It is a private meeting in that there's a list of invitees. It is a public meeting in that the township's not saying, no, you can't come, right? But I look forward to that conversation and to those relationships starting to develop. And I'm open to questions about that or thoughts from the board.
That's it for me.
I'm good.
Deb?
Going back to your meeting with Columbus, one thought, and I'm sure you probably know it, based on what you said on the JED, to reduce the take on the JED to get Columbus to pay some of the costs of development as far as planning. That is a long-term reduction. And if you look what Jersey Township did, which you may have seen what they did with New Albany, is New Albany fronted them planning money. They got to keep the JED money and then paid them back out of the JED money over time. Thus, you're not reducing, 30 years of income.
Right.
So what they did, I think the upfront was 200,000 that New Albany fronted them. And then it gets paid back as the JEDs come on. But just in there's nothing wrong with what you said about, reducing it.
Right.
Other than it rang a bell that maybe we don't want to reduce it because it's in perpetuity.
Yes, I think that you articulated what Pete said to me better than I articulated what Pete said to me.
Okay.
But that's because he would have crafted that language for Jersey Township.
Yes, he did.
And so the important piece there is that is not in perpetuity. It's until that funding is repaid, and then it stops. That's correct.
I see. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you didn't mention that because I'm going.
But
"Oh,
that
man, we're going to give up 20 years.
no, that's correct.
Okay.
But the beauty there is that our partner has deep pockets, and they can help us with some of these early expenses. And that's incredibly valuable for the township.
All right, that answers that. Thank you.
Yep.
Move on to administrative. Ashley has included the present employee manual and the updated version. Need to elaborate on that, Ashley?
Yeah, so myself, Mike, Chief, and Jason have been working on the employee manual. I think we've kind of discussed a little bit that there's a lot of repetitiveness in there. There's stuff that really doesn't work for our township that may have just kind of been thrown in there. There's stuff that goes against the fire handbook and manual, and we want to make sure that those can work cohesively. So we've been working on, I think you said you guys are working on a new manual for the fire department also at the same time. So we're making sure that our manual for our employees for the township and the ones for the fire department are cohesive. Because there's just stuff that don't align. Obviously in the fire department, their manual, goes a lot more into detail when it comes to safety and things like that. But this is the first rough draft. So any edits that you have, you can send them back to me. I can also send it to you in digital form if you want to go off of a working document. It's kind of what we've been doing. I'm a big paper in my hand kind of person at first. So these are just our red line versions of things that we have removed that we didn't feel were necessary, things that we've put in that we think are necessary to have in. One thing that John has commented about is a drive policy, as we have a township car. So we did get that drive policy in there, along with a couple other policies that just needed to be in there. There were some documents that it said in the book. This document's in the back of the book, like our violence in the workplace, sexual harassment, and some of our auditing stuff. Said it was in the back of the book, and it wasn't. So I made sure that those were actually placed in our book, because if it says it's there, it should be there. So you guys have the original, which is what is currently going on, and then the first red line version. So I figure it might take a few times for us to really get everything looking nice and pretty and sounding the way we want it to, but we just felt that the one that we have now does not work for
Okay.
the
We
employees here.
we can look through it, and then once we get a finished product that feel like everybody's happy with, I believe we'll have to go to the employment attorney. I think Kendra used one. Do you recall, Lisa?
I have no idea what she did.
It was, I think, a firm down in New Albany or something.
I can look through it.
Yeah, look, if you
Look
look,
through the files, I'm sure I
Yeah.
can find it.
because the prosecutor's office will not look at anything employee related.
Okay,
Unless they've changed their ways.
I can ask them and see kind of what their opinion is, and if they can't, kind of what direction we should go in, or I can even get a hold of Kendra and ask her and say, hey, who did you use?
Yeah, I don't recall what the name of the firm was. It was like year before last or something, I think.
Yeah, I'll get a hold of her and
Okay.
see, that way we can get as quickly as possible.
Okay,
Also, I don't have it on here, but I have had conversations with Spectrum about our phone systems. I had a very stern conversation with them, and I think that things will be moving in a quicker direction after the conversation I had today.
okay.
So
Well,
I was
let
trying to
me
be as
know.
kind as possible, but kindness is out the window, and now
That's our
it's out.
new arm of Spectrum we're gonna be dealing with, or the old Spectrum?
The real Spectrum.
Okay,
So essentially what had happened was they sent engineers out here. They climbed into the ceilings. They're saying we have cords that go to nowhere. We have phones that don't go to the boxes that they need to go to. And they pretty much said, we're gonna have to contract somebody out to rewire your building and yada, yada, yada. And my response was, well, we're 3 months into this at this point. Why are we just now finding out? Also, they came to over 2 weeks ago, and I was told that I would have a quote for if we needed to do that within 2 days, and I've yet to have one. So that was also a stern conversation I had of, you are supposed to be a large professional company, and we have yet to get either one of those promises met. So what's the problem? So I got a very quick response. And I think that all of our responses will be quite quick from now on. So hopefully in the next couple weeks. Because
thank you.
so we're still paying for our old system, and we're not
Okay,
paying for a
let
new
me know when we're gonna
Yes.
discontinue.
Yeah, as soon as we get that, we will be immediately switching over, but we'll see. I'm hoping a couple more weeks, cause.
Okay.
Yeah. Also for my approvals of the trustee minutes, April 6th, 2020, or sorry, April 16th, 2025 regular trustee meeting minutes. And then approval of the April 30th, 2025 special trustee meeting minutes.
Motion to approve,
So moved.
second.
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
And it's approved.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, chief?
Normally I, yield my time, but unfortunately I have some things we need to talk about, so.
It happens.
We have, I think, this is in our packet, the list of items.
Yep.
Okay. You have a list of surplus items, that are broken, worn out, tired, or whatever. They are worth nothing. Maybe you lift one might be $20. It does still work. I'd like to be able to declare those surplus and either scrap them or let somebody take it or whatever, because it's just not, they're not, none of it works really.
Okay,
That would actually require a motion, which I.
correct. Okay, the list is 2 vent saws, 2 work lights, 2 tough book computers, 2 gas-powered fans, 1 electric chainsaw, 1 portable deck gun base, 6 rolls of 1 3/4 hose, assorted 4-inch storage fittings, elliptical machine, and 2 weightlifting machines. That was a motion to declare surplus. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Couple of things real quick before we get to the next resolution. We, as we're going through the accreditation process, we're trying to be better. One of the things that is not really here is an established health and wellness program. So the first part of that is we're offering esophageal cancer testing for all the full timers. And if the part timers want to pay for it, they can. That's one of the rare cancers that firefighters get. So we're starting the screening. We'll be doing more of this throughout the year as well as physicals. But I just wanted to let you know that we're starting that direction. We have been, Chief McKean, not that he knows anybody at Columbus, but we have been in discussions with Station 36 opening up, and with some of the talks we've been having, we felt it was worth reaching out to see if that station is open, if we could use them in the southwest corner and they could use us a little bit. So we're working on a contract. We will not strip all the resources and send them all to Columbus. You may have heard horror stories of medics from other townships being in Columbus half the day. We will not be doing that. We've got the language in the contract. We've got 2 different ones. One that I'm very familiar with from Liberty, and then I've also got Washington Township. So we'll be coming back with that probably next month to have that worked out. You guys also sent you an email earlier in the week just to let you see where we were with runs and where we're headed with runs. So you can see if we stay on the path, which we are still as of today, we're going to be up almost 17% on the year for our run. Just got busier, we're getting bigger, getting more people, so that's where that is. And then resolution 255206, approval to accept the resignation of firefighter John Grumney. He's a part-timer. Like most of our part-timers, they need to seek full-time employment. He's got a full-time job. We did an exit with him. He wanted to stay as part-time, but we are having, it's amazing to us that we're having people turning in applications weekly without us even advertising. So it speaks highly of this organization. And we were renting his gear at $150 a month when he was working every 6th day. I'm not going to rent his gear for maybe 1 day a month. So when he understood, he said if we ever have an opportunity, he'd love to come back, but it was all great. So I would like you to accept his resignation, please.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion carried, accepted the resignation.
And with that, I yield.
Okay, Jason, you want to go through your list here?
Good evening, Jason with maintenance. Just a quick recap on the road construction that's happened out there that Doug had talked about. Repair work has been completed on Lewis Road, which consisted of removing a 4-foot wide edge pavement, a total of 1,200 feet long, and placing base asphalt in. Was done last Friday. The base work repairs have been completed on Mayfair, Lakewood, and Mayfield Court, which will follow up with a asphalt overlay. The rejuvenating agents have been applied to Gorsuch Road, Montgomery Road, and Ivory Ridge, which is basically like a sealant to get longevity of pavement. And then, as we discussed with the emergency call for it on Green Creek Road, this number is a typo. It was actually 3673. The 5151 is we have a washout hole along the edge of the berm that was discovered by a resident that will be taken care of in the near future. As far as for the parks, we have begun the bathroom renovation. Rough plumbing's been completed and approved by Delaware County. We replaced the floor and some other patching of the walls today. And with that moving forward, it'll be getting the painting taken care of. Contract's been signed for the floor to be installed. Partitions have been ordered. And once the painting is completed, which I'm actually going to hire Dustin next door here to do that, since he can put the time and effort into prepping and making sure the walls are clean and right with his Sherman-Williams rep. Then we're going to get the floors done, the partitions done, all the fixtures and everything else be in there. So we're hoping for a mid, if not late June completion is my goal if all the ducks stay in a row. The cemeteries had 3 barrels, 2 urn, 1 full. Another errand coming up. We actually got a call today for another barrel in mid-June, I think. And then the monument footers went in last week, so they've all been installed. And then just keeping up with the grass and fighting the rain. And one of the bigger projects we've been tackling, Bill and I, on our rainy day time is repairing the salt barn. We've discovered it's been in quite despair for a while. The nails had actually rotted off of the beams that held the walls up. So we're actually lining the inside with plywood with some nice latch screws to contain it. And then we have to get some roof repairs taken care of, which I'll have due for next week. I've been getting some quotes. We basically got to replace the roof because it's leaking. And then hopefully get that all taken care of, repaired. And our goal would be to look into replacing the salt storage structure with concrete walls, a tarp, and then making that little building like a storage building, since it'll be sturdy by then, but it's reaching the end of its life for salt. So that's all I got.
Thank you. Mike, got a zoning?
Yeah, right now we're at 31 permits for the year as compared to last year, this time 20. We've got open enforcement issues. We are currently still tracking 10 code enforcement violations, 4 of them being businesses operating in residential area. First one I'm gonna talk about is NEF, that commercial dump truck business on Sunland Village Road. Joe Clace at Plan for Land is working with him. They also are have a meeting with the zoning commission to discuss a possible PCD. But right now, Monday night, they were at the BZA meeting to request permission to pursue an administrative appeal. And what they're basically doing is they're asking the the BZA to approve them coming in and saying that they have a non-conforming use case that would allow them to continue to work down there. I've talked with Corey about this. He is on our side, although he does say that there is case law that states that some conforming uses are allowed to stay, but they can't be any more severe than they actually are, and they've got to prove it. And right now, we don't know, but there are going to be, I know, and I looked through cases or Clace's case, and there are some people he's going to call in as witnesses, one being a previous zoning person here, and then another one being the homeowner, to probably say that they have a conforming use. But that remains to be seen. I'm not sure who's going to end up showing up for that or whatever. But in the meantime, I put a cease and desist on that property because it's been going on for over 2 years. And Joe's asking that cease and desist be put on hold while he goes through this appeal with the Board of Zoning Appeals. Now, they were here to ask for them to rule on whether they can appeal, which would go into next month, which means the following month would be the earliest they'd be able to do anything, and we'd be into a 3rd year on this. So Corey says he has no problem if I get your guys okay to tell him to push forward on that cease and desist. But you guys have to approve that for me. So I guess I'm asking for you to approve cease and desist on that dump truck business.
I'm happy to make that motion.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to move that. Is it called NEF?
Neff is the owner, Mr. Neff, Derek Neff.
That they cease and desist until this issue is resolved through the legislative or administrative process in the township.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion is made. Have a roll call vote, please.
Jackson.
Aye.
Holiday.
Aye.
Trainer.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that. The second one is Kaposha, which is a boardwalk business right across the street from them. They've not filed their application yet with the zoning commission, but they are working with them for a rezoning of the PCD. They have, the lawyer for them has been in conversation with Joe Clace, and I am assuming that they're probably going to try to go the same route that Neff is going with the BZA, because they probably have an even stronger case for a non-conforming use. So nobody said anything to me. Scott Messer, who is the attorney, has has indicated to me that he's looking at that and he's talked to Clace about it too. So I would imagine that they'll continue, both of them will probably continue to work with the zoning commission. And they're keeping their meetings open for the PCD plan of rezoning, but they're probably going to pursue that, that non-conforming use. Rocket Man, who was approved for an expanded home occupation, and he was supposed to move the majority of his business out. He has called me and he will be out by the end of the month. So they'll be down to within their guidelines for their expanded home use. The tag commercial landscaping business, I stopped in earlier this month and met with him and walked his property again. He is getting that cleaned up. He does have a lot to clean up on there, so it's going to take him some time, but he is making gains. Also had an issue with a landscaping business right next to him that one of the residents complained about. And I went down and talked with him and looked at what he was doing, and he was well within his guidelines because they only had him and his son would get in their truck and leave every morning. But I got another complaint on that same property, and I called him to talk about it again, and he said he is going to go ahead just to cover himself and come down to the BZA and get an expanded home occupation variance. So I expect him to come into them. There's 6 other nuisance properties that still working with. Currently 4 of them are in their various stages of cleanup. We still have the one unowned property on Harlem Road that we can't do anything with. And the Hatch Road property that Health Department notified them they had to get that cleaned up by the end of April. April 28th was the day that they were supposed to go out. The health department was going to go back out and do an inspection of the property. And Melissa's been out for about the last week and a half. She is not due back until the 27th, I believe. And so I left a message for her. She'll call me back on it. In fact, she'll probably call me back tomorrow because I left her a message the other day and she left me a voicemail this morning on something. That's not an issue anymore. You guys can skip the next part. The zoning commission, just to let you know where some of the things they're at. They're currently planned for 2 PCD rezoning requests, which we already discussed. They're putting the finishing touches on a revised signs article in the resolution. The new article will take the burden to address the sign request off the BZA. I'll take a lot of it off them and let it come to me. As long as it's within the guidelines, I can then issue the permits. And the only time they'd have to go to BZA is to request something that I say they couldn't have. So I think that's going to be, we're going to be head and shoulders above on that. So the BZA doesn't get bogged down with all that, all those signs coming in. The Board of Zoning Appeals approved a sign variance for the Westerville Estates on Monday night. They approved 3 variance requests for the property. And that's in a PCD on Gorsuch Road to allow for a garage, driveway, and deck. They received a request for permission to submit an administrative appeal, which I reviewed with you already. And I did email you guys information on that iWork program. And when I talked with Chief about it, he said he'd like to have an opportunity to look at it before we pursue anything more. So I'm gonna let Chief look at that. It was a zoning program that would put all of our stuff in the digital form so we can get out of the paperwork and we don't have boxes and boxes of permits in there we have to go through. So when the township does grow, you're not gonna be bogged down with a mountain of paper back there. But I'll let you know with an update on that.
And refresh my memory, the upfront cost.
The upfront cost to get it started was $4 grand. It's $6,000 a year. But the beauty of the whole thing is that the cost of the program is based on your population. With our population, I told him it was 4,700 at the time. I think John indicated it might be 5,200 now, but regardless, the guy said, yes, you'll get that. You'll get it at that price. He goes, but the beauty of it is, he goes, once you get in, it doesn't matter how much you grow, they won't bump that price back up. So if we were to wait for that same program to go in and we got 2x or 3 times the population in the next 10 years, you'd be paying 18 grand a year as opposed to locked in a 6.
Okay.
6 grand a year, but there's a $4,000 upfront initial fee to get everything set up and change it.
Now, what happens if that company goes under and all those zoning, because don't you guys have to hold on to zoning permits and stuff?
We do. And I will be able to, I know that I can save stuff off of that right onto my computer, but I'm sure they're gonna have, and I'll look into that, Lisa, but I'm sure they'll have some way to do that.
Like a
Because
cloud drive.
Go to the
Yeah.
cloud.
Well, I mean, what happens if they go out of business or we don't
Yeah, and dump all our
contract with
gas.
them anymore. Are we able to get all our stuff?
I
That's
wonder if
been
we
on
could
there?
even, cause we have like drives for everything else that like I keep in the office. I wonder if we could download it onto something like that.
Mm.
Maybe
Maybe
every
minutes
year.
and all that I have
There
on
will
like
be.
separate drives in case our computer systems go down.
There will be, I'll delve into that with them and make sure, but I'm sure they've got a lot of big townships on it. I think Berlin or Berkshire, one of those two is actually on it also. And so there's gonna be a way that data won't be lost.
Okay.
Mike, I'm curious, and I know that this would be a very difficult thing for you to quantify, but could you maybe describe like what kind of a burden it is on you for the minutia of things like getting signs out of the right of way or taking them off of poles and posts where they're not supposed to be? How much of a consumption is that for you away from what could be more productive time?
It depends. I'm pretty much on a routine when I break for lunch, I go out and I drive the township and I check every one of the properties that I'm dealing with. And if I see any issues, I address them then I address the signs right there. So I'm usually about anywhere from an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours a day.
And I guess the other layer to that question is, does it often become a hindrance or a burden of having to follow up on a lot of those things multiple times to actually get some action, because all you can do within the powers of the township is stop in there and say something to them?
It's monotonous, yes. Is that what you're asking? Yeah, and it's frustrating because, I mean, bottom line, unless we're willing to, on some of the stuff, and most of the people, we have a lot that comes in that I address and it's taken care of the next day that you guys don't even hear about. I don't even bother telling you that, but you know, a lot of people will address it and then they'll keep working on it and I keep stopping in there. And as long as they're making gains, and after talking with Corey says the same thing. As long as they're making an effort and making gains to clean it up, we're going to give them the opportunity, because a lot of it, if we were to push the point and say, like, I'd say I want to fine them for it or anything like that, Corey'd have to take it to court. And if it's something as small as, you know, the person's continually not keeping a sign out there, or he keeps putting a sign back up. I mean, Corey said it could be years before the courts will deem that worthy enough to go into the courts.
And just out of curiosity, if you had the legal authority to fine on certain infractions without going through a court process, would that be advantageous
That
to
would
you
be
and
a
your
beautiful
department?
thing. Yes.
I was just curious.
That would definitely, yes, it'd be a lot better if we could do that.
Thanks, Mike.
On the Hatch Road property, what are the consequences if they fail this reinspection? Do you see any resolution for this property in sight?
Melissa hasn't been real specific on it. My thinking is it's gonna fall right back on us again. It's gonna say, okay, they won't do it. It needs to be cleaned up. Township, you guys can go clean it up. And that would potentially be a very high cost to the township because of everything that's probably in that, around that house right now. You couldn't just send in like a normal maintenance crew to clean that up.
Having conversed with the neighbors that are immediately contiguous to that property, I'm not sure any of us would tolerate that situation as it is. And even though it may encumber the township, it seems that for the sake of our residents, that something should be done to resolve that issue.
I agree with you. We can look at getting a cost on that. I can get that together. And then, I mean, ultimately, if they're probably not gonna pay that, but ultimately that's gonna go against their tax bill.
Right.
Then I guess theoretically you could force a sale of the house if it didn't get paid back to us. But again, yeah, that's something that you guys have the authority to.
Yeah.
It just seems that it's not right that our residents that live there have to put up with that.
I agree.
And that we do have the power to do something about it, and it seems that we should.
Well, yeah, and I agree, and I think that the Neff situation on Center Village Road is another example of this, right? Like maybe not to the degree, but you get these things strung out. The legal process is over 2-3 years at a time. Meanwhile, the neighbors are the ones that have to suffer. So if we have the ability to do something about it, I think we ought to do something about it.
Patch Road thing's about as bad as it gets.
Yeah.
See what you get back from the health department lady. We'll go from there.
All right, now I'll push forward on it.
Thanks, Mike.
Lindsay?
Everybody. The communications committee, the routine things that we have going on is that our monthly email goes out Tuesday, May 27th. We're also volunteering, splitting up time at the weekly farmers markets to pass out information, get people to sign up for email lists, to try and actually put foot on the pavement to grow that communications. And then we're working on our June/July newsletter. It'll be our next one. So we're going to be reaching out to folks asking for content. We'd like to get it mailed in people's mailboxes before the Harlem Township Heritage bike event. That way we can make sure as many people know about that as possible. Then the thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight is a continuation of our previous conversation where in response to the strategic planning input meeting at the church that was specifically related to communications, there seemed to be a desire for even additional communications if we can grow it in some way. And we had asked, we think that because the budget was locked in, that we would need additional funds to do any additional communications in terms of mailing or advertising or printing. Now, you had asked us to come up with what could that cost, and we met as a group and we really talked about what is realistic and what kind of improvement we could make versus the cost, because we want to be responsible as well with the township money. And it is our desire to try to use additional funding in digital means over mailing. And that's because we feel like we're already hitting, if our addresses are correct, basically every household in this township at least 4 times a year. And our engagement is our engagement. And we don't necessarily see that large expense, that mailing and printing costs, increasing that. We don't really see that moving the needle. However, there is room to move the needle in terms of digital means. So for example, we have approximately 570 people that follow our township Facebook page. That is not everybody in the township. We could grow that. But in addition, the way that things like Facebook work is that unfortunately, of those 570 people, only a very small percentage ever really see what we post. There are plenty of people out there all day, every day that probably are interested, but just because of the algorithms, what they're searching on their, when they're scrolling on their social media, they're not just seeing us naturally. That's just how it works. So we put 2 requests on the agenda tonight. The first is a request to authorize up to $50 a month for digital boosting of social media posts. So what that means is that you can click boost on one of our posts that we make, and it will forcibly send it to more people that follow us. It could be as simple as that. Hopefully more of that 570 people would see it. And for a relatively low cost per month, we could hopefully increase engagement. The second item, if we do want to discuss more printing at all, I think a perfect example is what we're talking tonight about limited home rule, for example. That seems important enough that we may want to discuss at least one more mass mailing to ensure that every household receives information. We anticipate that could cost approximately $3,000 more than what we had budgeted to do another mass mailing for the year. So that's why we've put 2 on the agenda tonight, one for monthly digital and one for one additional mailer, if you so choose. The mailer is hard to say, we know we need this much money the rest of the year to do more mailings, because we do not know how many more mailings we would need to do. There could be many things that come up that we suddenly want to do mailings for, but we don't know what the future holds, right? So that's why I said we could get started by authorizing 1 additional mailing at $3,000. And then we could get started immediately for a relatively low cost at up to $50 a month. So would you like me to explain any more of that? Or are you guys following our kind of plan of action? And happy to hear if you disagree, that you think that digital is not the case, but that's where our heads are at, because we just want to be responsible with the township money. And we're just really not sure if mailers and mailers and mailers will actually move the needle in terms of engagement.
Can you remind me of the existing or standard mailing budget? The budget we have is allotted for print. Lisa, I don't know if you
Say it was
remember.
close to, well, it's quarterly. And it's approximately between $2,500 and $3,000 each time. And then there should have been probably just a little bit of additional because it's my understanding, Lisa, that printing is not just what our communications committee's doing. It's what, all the townships printing and mailing, just even for administrative costs. So I would say at minimum, that would be what, $12,000 at minimum.
And do you remember off the top of your head how many addresses we have on the mailing list?
It's about 2,200,
And
2,000-ish,
community Facebook has 500 something.
570. And we also have about 650 people on our email list. So I feel like the delta there is there's a bigger delta digitally of trying to get more people involved, which is why we want to push that. And it's also a relatively lower cost. Can we put something in like the next newsletter about joining the Facebook page? Because then that could help the digital side, because there might be people that don't really know that we have one or don't know how to find it. We put it in every newsletter. Do you? Yeah. Okay. Same thing with sign up for our email list. I know I've seen that one. Yes.
Just have a question about whether or not it would save much if you could not send the mailer to the people who get the information with their email. I don't know how much that would save.
Yeah, we've talked about that. That's a great question. We've talked about that as that would be our eventual goal, to make it clear that if you are asking to receive email, that now you are stopping receiving mail, but it's not something that we can do quickly. I think we're gonna have to build up to that. And we can make that a goal if we choose as a township that that's something we want to do. We could make it a goal for the latter half of the year to begin communicating that so people don't get surprised by it. But I think we would have to decide collectively that we're going to actually start pursuing that so people are aware. Good question.
Any other questions?
Lisa, this is not a problem. Where would,
No,
where would
nobody
this,
discussed it with me, so I haven't looked into it. I mean, I don't know.
are you
I would
comfortable?
have to look at the budgeting and all that.
Are you comfortable with this?
Just in terms of options, if we wanted to do something small, like being able to boost our Facebook communications, we could start with that. It sounds like this limited home rule and other discussions are not happening, immediately, or we're not going to have to put out a mailing next month. So we have some time if we wanted to come back to that larger piece.
To your point, we have an existing quarterly mailer,
We do have an existing quarterly mailer.
multiple pages.
Correct, which is why we weren't, the more we thought about it, the less enthusiastic we were about adding, because it's very expensive to print and mail to everybody.
So I firmly believe that the transparency and the communication of the township is probably the best that it's ever been at this time. And I think that a lot of people would agree with that sentiment. Personally and professionally, I understand and believe in the power of social representation and digital representation. So I could be in favor of those promoted posts, be it Facebook or other methodologies such as that. I would not be in favor of additional print spending.
Yeah, this time I agree.
Yeah, because I was at the committee meeting. That's where the committee is too.
Mm-hmm.
And part of what we talked about is we've got to teach our community that they have a responsibility to go pull for information as much as we have a responsibility to push. So to your point about, shutting down how many printed, we were talking about maybe turn of the year, we could start a campaign to explain what it costs to do this and allowing people to opt out of the printed version and just start, checking those off, but not shutting somebody out, just
Entirely.
so that we at least are pushing to those who have not elected not to receive hard copy. But I think we should experiment with the boosting side on Facebook a little bit. I mean, it's a drop in the bucket here for $50 a month to do some boosts. It'll be interesting with the metrics we get back to see what we come back with as far as what the response rate is to then those boosts.
And I mean, Lindsay, you could even, I'm not asking for it, but you could do the math, right? Like at $50 a month, you'd have to do that for 60 months to reach the cost of one additional print.
Right.
And let's take 500 something subscribers times 60 months.
Yeah.
And not to mention the additional shares and impressions that you'd get.
Mhm.
It's not even a comparison. for
Right.
me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Pursue the boost.
Great.
So I'm willing to make the motion for $50 a month.
Okay.
With the stipulation that Lisa finds $50 a month. To support boosting the presence of the township on social media.
Second.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Dave?
Greetings, Dave Snyder, and I'm going to be giving a real quick little presentation regarding the current status of America 250 projects. So the primary project that we're pushing right now is the Revolutionary War Veterans Graves recognition events. We want to make sure that we are getting information out to the public and inviting public and encouraging public to come to the cemeteries where there are the graves of Revolutionary War veterans. And I think it's a really exciting opportunity for us to help people connect with history. And it's going to start on June 21st. There's an asterisk here with lots of caveats. I won't get into all of them, but on June 21st, it's a Saturday, we're going to have our dress rehearsal. We're going to start the process of all of this, setting it up, being able to guide people around, provide handouts, get information out to all the people that we're trying to connect here connect with in the township. We have a lot of work to do following that. The next one is coming up on September 6th, and then there'll be one in November, one we get into 2026, one in May, one in September, one in November. And that's going to take us right through the America 250 year. There's a lot of contingencies here. We need to make sure that we have the process in place to check, is there going to be a burial at where we want to be setting up? What's our plan B? What's our plan C? What are we going to do if the weather is inclement? Are we going to have a rain out? All of these sorts of things come in. We want to be checking that we get the information out in a way that people can understand it in different, using different channels of communication. So there's a lot of things we're going to be working with here. It's going to be a dress rehearsal for all of this, but I think we are at a point of takeoff. We've gathered a great deal of information and we're ready to go with this. This is going to be followed shortly after we're going to have an encampment at the Harlem Township Day with the group, and I won't try to pronounce their name, that does essentially French and Indian War soldiers camp encampment reenacting. So that's a real exciting opportunity to try to get people into that frame where they're trying to get their heads wrapped around what was history, how do I connect to history that's 250 years old, sort of thing. And from there, we've got more projects coming down the road. So that's where we are with that. I thank you. Are there any questions?
Since you're there and then on that date,
just let us know and we can make sure people know about it.
I'm almost ready to hit the send button on messages and
That's good.
you're on the list, yes.
Great.
As is, excellent.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, thank you. Any public comments? Gentlemen, you have any business?
I do not.
If there's no further business, I'd move to adjourn the meeting at 9:06.
Second.
Second.
Favor aye.
Aye.
Sure, thank you.
Almost. Made it 2 hours.
Almost. Improvement.
One reason, right?
Great.
Next week.
Jason in the hall. Jason in the hall talking to